So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Stevio method, which is all about performing live with the Modular. I will put links in the description to his videos where he shows more or less how he's approaching things with his system, and we will have a look today at a few of his techniques in VCV rack. We will start with what I call splitting sequences that can really add interest to your patches. So here I have the sequencer from Count Modular. This sequencer has this feature built in, but we will look also at how to achieve this without a dedicated sequencer. So basically this technique is about adding variation to a sequence by having different voices play the same sequence, similar to the Hocketing technique. Let's send output A to the bandpass input of tangents. I have tangents set up so it will ping the filter with a resonance pretty high up. So let's set a 7-step sequence and I will activate step 1, 3, 5 and 6, and already we have sound. We can also add a steady bass drum to this. I have here plats in an analog bass drum model. Very nice. Okay, and now let's send output B to another plats that I have here. It's set to chords mode. Let's just unmute this. It's also going through a delay and filter and tangents again for some movement. And now we can route the sequence, the same sequence, to output B as well, and by that split the triggers in this case and create a different pattern. So let's, for example, route step 5 instead of to output A to output B. Oh yeah. So we have the same pattern, but it's played by two different voices. But what if I want to use a different sequencer and create the same effect? So here I have the grid sequencer from JW. It's sequencing pellet in FM mode. So let me just unmute this. I have some LFO on the FM amount. And by the way, I'm using the teleport modules from little utils just to sort of teleport the cables. You can see I have here the clock. So I have the input module receiving the clock and the reset and everything, and here the output module is outputting those cables, just so I don't have cables going all over the patch, just to make it a bit tidier for the video. Okay, but now again I want to split the sequence with another voice. In this case will be the percussive vibration, and for this we can use one of the most amazing tools in Modular, a sequential switch. So let's use the one from Bog Audio. It will look like this. It has one input and 8 outputs. So we can send one source to up to 8 destinations. In this case we have 7 triggers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's set the switch to have 7 steps. Now we will send what we want to switch is the trigger, so we will send the triggers to the input of the switch. This will be the signal we will switch, but it will also be the signal that will drive the switch. So this will be also the clock of the switch. Let's also reset everything, so I will connect the same reset trigger, and now instead of going to the clock I have here a master reset button again with the teleport module, so I can just reset everything from here. Very nice. So now I want, for example, steps 1, 3 and 6 to trigger pellet, and the other step to trigger the percussive vibration. So we need a way to combine those triggers, and for this Boolean logic is the perfect tool. So let's use 2 binary modules from Grayscale, which will look like this. They are set to OR logic, which means that whenever each step is active, one or the other or both, we will get a trigger from the output. So we basically combine the triggers. So again, let's use steps 1, 3 and 6 with one binary, and this we'll use to trigger pellet instead of the triggers from the sequencer. So now we have only 3 triggers out of the 7 triggering pellet. And now we can combine the other triggers, the other steps to trigger the percussive vibration, and by that we split the sequence from the grid sequencer into two different voices. So I just set or send all the other triggers to the second binary, and this will trigger the percussive vibration module. Oh yeah! So again, we have the same sequence, but it's split into different voices. And the nice thing about binary is that we can also switch the inputs on and off, which makes it perfect for live performances. This is really important in the so-called Stevio method. It's all about live performance. So now I can just create less tension. And add more tension. Bring everything in. Also with the sequencer from Count Modular we can change the steps on the fly, creating variation and movement. Again, really important for live performances. So A will trigger or will ping tangents, B will trigger the chord. I can add and reduce the tension. Okay, so now let me show you quickly how to switch the pitch also. So if we want to have the pitch going to both voices together with the triggers, again we will need a sequential switch. So I will just duplicate the one I have here. And it has 7 steps, exactly the same number of steps we have on the sequencer we want to split. The clock will be again our triggers. So for each step of the grid sequencer we have a step on the sequential switch. Very nice. Let's also reset everything. I will just use the same reset here and trigger the reset. Okay, so now we need to use the pitch information instead of the triggers like we did here, because we want to switch the pitch information. So I will send the pitch information from the sequencer to the sequential switch. And again, we will need somehow to combine the steps. So for this, because it's pitch and not triggers, Boolean logic will not help us so much, but we can use a mixer, and in this case I will use UMix from Bog Audio. This is a unity mixer. In this case we will use it only to combine the voltages, but we have to make sure that it will work nicely with control voltage and with the pitch information. This we can change in the right click menu. Under output clipping we have better for CV. It can work also nicely with audio, but in this case we use it for CV. So we will change it. And now again we can combine steps 1, 3 and 6. Just like we did with the triggers, and this will control the pitch of pellet. So now we have 3 steps for pellet, and we have all the other steps. I will just duplicate UMix and we combine all the other steps, just like we did with the triggers. This time it's with pitch, and we will use this to sequence the percussive vibration. So now we are splitting also the pitch sequence, not only the triggers, with the sequential switch. Of course we can do this with more than just 2 voices, but for now let's have a look at another technique. So another tool Stevio is using is a precision adder, which allows us to add voltage precisely, what makes it perfect for pitch variations, and also to add sequences and create a new sequence. For now the only precision adder I found is from the commercial Stellare collection. It's called Sigma. We have 4 inputs, and when nothing is connected each one will add 1 volt. So basically it will transpose the pitch by an octave. I have it here going to the scope. If I just add, which is green, you can see we have 1. I can subtract, you can see we have -1, and I can add them together. and create all sorts of variations. Now, by the way, I have here the whole collection from Stellare. This collection is based around the Stevio method. So if you're looking to do stuff like this in VCV, I really recommend checking this out. It has all the tools you will need. But for now, let's try and create a precision adder with individual modules available for us in VCV. So here I have an FM voice with kitchen sync. I have seg3 set to a 7-step sequence, sequencing the pitch through quantum of kitchen sync. I'm also sequencing the shape and depth. It will sound like this. This is the sequence. Now I want to be able to control and add variation to this sequence with something similar to a precision adder. And already I have to warn you, this will work really nicely in VCV because there is no imperfection in the voltage amount and so on. But in hardware, the best way to do something like this will be with a precision adder. That's also why it's called a precision adder, because it's very precise and will add exactly the right amount of voltage, which is important for pitch information. So the tools we will use constants from ML, which will output constant voltage in steps of semitones, which makes it again perfect for pitch information. We will need also a way to decide what goes where and when. So I will use mute 8 from Bog Audio. So we can mute and unmute the different channels, and we can even control this with CV, with voltage. Now, if you want to control this with a MIDI controller, you can also set it to latch in the right-click menu, which means that one click it will mute, another click it will unmute. So this will work better with a MIDI controller. And again, we need some way to mix and combine everything. So also here we will use umix, again, Bog Audio. Again, let's set it to work better with CV, just like we did before. Now there's another module to combine both Mute 8 and umix. It's called MuMix. So it will also combine or mix the voltages, and we can also mute and unmute the different steps or the different channels. I chose to go with the Mute 8 because it has also CV inputs, but you can use also MuMix instead of the MuMix instead of the Mute 8 and umix combination if you wish. I will now use this combination. Okay, so let's use constants. I will use the positive 12 semitones, which is 1 octave up, negative 12, 1 octave down. Let's also take the advantage and use the positive and negative 7 semitones and the 5 semitones, so we can create lots of variation and transpose the sequence live. Let's already mute those channels just in case. Okay, now we will send this to umix to mix them or combine them. Okay, and now let's also do something like this. You know what, let's tag this just so we know what is what. I will use the vertical text display modules from module from Submarine, so I can just tag what each channel is. So this will be +1 for +1 octave, then we have -1 for -1 octave, then we have +7, -7, +5 and -5. So when I want to mute and unmute, I know exactly what I'm adding, which interval I'm adding. Okay, now we want to mix this also with the main sequence because we want to be able to transpose it. So the sequence will go first again to umix, and from there it will go back to the quantizer. Okay, and now we can add to the sequence. So if I unmute this, this is the original sequence, just like before. And now I can start unmuting the different channels and add to the sequence. So for example, I can transpose it an octave up, an octave down, and so on. So I can transpose the sequence again, perfect for live situations and creating variation. Now we get those no tails here and there, those glitches. So again, if I do it, those glitches because I'm not hitting directly with the clock. This we can fix quite simply with sample and hold. I will use the one from Bog Audio. Okay, so first of all we will send the mix to the sample and hold, just like this, and from there it will go back to the quantizer. And now to trigger the sample and hold we will use the clock. So actually only with the clock we will get a change of notes. So it will be quantized with the clock. So now if I do this, we don't get those glitches because it will wait for the next clock until it will actually transpose it. So it's basically quantized to the clock. Okay, let's put this in context. I have a few more voices here. I have interzone from Valley, receiving a few triggers from the Sec3 through an OR logic. Again, I'm just combining those triggers, going through some delay. It will sound like this. Oh yeah. Very nice. And I have here also some drums. Again, I'm using the teleport modules just so the cables are not going everywhere. I have some for clocks. And for audio, I have the trigger sequencer, again count modular triggering or sequencing 2 hi-hats, a kick drum and a snare. It will sound like this. Oh yeah. Oh yes, and again I can transpose in live situations and create variation. Okay, now we can also take this even further and mix another sequence that has, for example, different length and create even more variation. So let's add here the ADDR sequencer, again, Bog Audio. Let's set its range to -+1 volt. So we have 2 octaves. If 1 volt is 1 octave, we have 2 octaves here. So we have 2 octaves. It will not go too up or too much down or to a lower pitch. Okay, let's randomize it. And let's, for example, have 5 steps. Let's make it to go forward from the first step. So we have 5 steps here. We have 7 steps on the Sec3. So they are not aligned, and this will create more variation. Let's run this with the clock, which I have here, and also use the reset and reset everything, just so everything is running together. And now I can add this sequence to the mutes module, and I will mute it already, so I can decide when it will be added. And from there it will go to U-Mix. And now I can add and combine this sequence with the first sequence and create even more variation. Very nice. I can also change this a bit, maybe do something. So again, I can create in live situations lots of variation, change sequences on the fly. Just by turning a couple of knobs, I can get a totally different sequence, so I don't have to worry so much about my sequences, and I can create variation and interest, which is important in a live situation. Okay, so let's have a look at another technique. So another tool for adding interest to the sound is swing. And the way Stevio is doing it is by delaying a divided copy of the trigger. So here I have a hi-hat module from Hora. It will sound like this with straight triggers, which are coming in this case from an LFO. This is how it will sound like. And now to add some swing, we have to split this stream of triggers into 2 separate streams and delay one of them. So for splitting, we can use a flip-flop. Now this module will take an incoming stream of triggers and will output it once from one output and once from the other, basically splitting the signal into 2 streams. So let's send the triggers first to the trigger input of the flip-flop, which is a nice and funny name. We will take the first output, the A output, directly to the hi-hat. It will sound like this. You can hear we get only half the triggers. So this is again the main one. And this is after the flip-flop. Very nice. So now what we have to do is combine this split stream of triggers with another one which is delayed. So first of all, we will use again logic to combine the triggers. So let's send this from the flip-flop to the binary module from grayscale. This is set again to an OR logic. Now for delaying the signal, we will use the trigger delay from ML. So let's send output B to the input of the delay, and from there again to the binary. We will use the logic output to trigger the hi-hat. So whenever one trigger or the other or both are active, the hi-hat will be triggered. So we're combining them into one stream. So if I send this now to trigger the hi-hat, we have again the same main stream of triggers. Now this works best with short triggers, so let's change the length. We have it here built in the trigger delay to all the way down, so we have really short bursts of triggers. And now we can start introducing swing with the delay. Again, this will delay only one stream, which is combined with the second stream. So let's have a listen. And we have shuffle, we have swing. Again, without and with. Very nice. Now this is the basic idea, but let's see what we can do with this, how we can use this in context. Here I have a few things going on. I have 2 FM sounds with 4 FM operators. Each one is playing a different sequence. So I have here the dual 8-step sequencer from Count Modular, sequencing one pair, and another part of it is sequencing another pair. This is the first one. This is the second one. And together they will sound like this. Very nice. Now the fun thing is to add different amounts of swing to different voices. So here I have again the same setup. I have here again the flip-flop, the trigger delay, and the logic module, just like we've seen before. Let's send the triggers from the sequencer first to the flip-flop. So the first sequence comes from trigger A. This will go to the first flip-flop. The second one comes from trigger E. This will go to the second one. Again, we have 2 parts. Again, this will split the stream of triggers into 2. Let's send outputs A to the logic module, to again both sections. Outputs B will go to the trigger delay, and from there to the logic. Very nice. Now let's set again the length all the way down because we need short triggers. Now we will use this to trigger our voices. So this will be voice 1, this will be voice 2. So we have exactly the same sequence like before, but now we can start introducing swing by delaying, adding delay to one of the streams. So let's start with the first voice. Oh yeah, and the second one. Again, different delay amount. So we get variations. It sounds quirky and nice. We can add a nice bass drum to this, again from Plats, just to put this in context. So again, I have 2 different swing amounts. And I have again the same setup for adding swing, the flip-flop, the trigger delay, the logic. For now, there is no delay set, so there is no swing. Let's listen to this. Very nice. And now we can introduce different delay times for each of the hi-hats. We can solo this also so you can hear it. This is one. This is the other one. And you can hear the swing, different amounts of swing. It adds lots of movement and motion to the sound. I have here also a nice bass with the percussive vibration. I'm using a sequential switch to send different pitch information. I have G, I have F. When nothing is connected, it will stay on C. So I have 3 different intervals. This is going to the mixer. Yes, so you can bring voices in and out, introducing more or less swing or delay. Again, perfect for live performances. Really nice. Let's have a look at another technique. Okay, so another interesting technique is separating the pitch sequence from the trigger sequence, which makes it really easy to come up with new ideas on the fly. So here I have a 16-step sequence, again with a sequencer from Count Modular. This is sequencing the additive vibration. It will sound like this. Okay, and now instead of using the same sequencer for triggering the voice, we will use a different sequencer. So I have here the trigger sequencer, again Count Modular. Again, I'm using the teleport modules, by the way, just to have the patch a bit cleaner. Now this is set to have 7 steps, which is different from the first, the pitch sequencer that has 16 steps. So we get more variation. Let's use this to trigger our voice. So I will use output A in this case. And I can switch. And create all sorts of variations by playing with the both sequencers. And again, all of this we can do on the fly during a live performance and get different variations. We can take this even another step further and use another sequencer for modulation. So here I have the ADDR sequencer. Again, it's set to a different sequence length. Here I have 6 steps. Let's trigger this with another sequencer from the trigger sequencer. And this will modulate the decay time, the fall time of the additive vibration. We have a different sequence. Oh yeah. Very nice. So again, we decoupled, we separated the pitch from the triggers and also the modulation in this case, and with a change of a switch we can create totally different results. Let's add some drums just for fun. I have here a bass drum with plaits and hi-hat. Let's add this. Oh yeah. Oh yes, I have here another voice. The grid sequencer is sequencing kitchen sink, which is going through some delay. Again, I have the pitch coming from one sequence, so from the grid sequencer. but the triggers are coming from a different sequence. I have it coming from, again, the trigger sequencer. So let's have a listen to this. The grid sequencer has 16 steps, the trigger sequencer has 5, so we get constant variation. So again, this is perfect for live situations, which is all what this video is about. Let's have a look at another example. Okay, the last thing we will look at is using a switch matrix mixer for changing melodies on the fly. So I have here a few things ready. First of all, I have 4 ADDR sequencers. For each sequencer, I have 3 different values set, just to make everything more simple. Stevio is also doing this in his video. So I have 2 steps on 0, I have 2 steps a bit higher, again 2 steps on 0, 2 steps even higher. This is repeating itself more or less, so sometimes I go lower, sometimes I go higher, but I have on each sequence 3 values set. Now this is going to 4 mu mix modules. In this case, again, just for simplicity, I chose to go with the mu mix and not create 4 precision adders like before, but basically this will allow us to add the sequences together. From there, it's going to a switch matrix mixer, which allows us not only to route the sequences to various places, but also to mix them and create even more variations. Make sure to set both mu mix and the matrix mixer to work with CV, because we are dealing again with pitch information. I'm sending this to a quantizer, and from there to 4 voices that we will look at in a second. Now, just like before, also here I'm using sample and hold for each voice to make sure I don't get those note tails, those glitches, because I'm triggering the sequences with a separate trigger sequencer. Again, decoupling pitch and rhythm. So with the help of the sample and hold, we will get a change in note only with the trigger. So if we have a listen to the first voice, which is again the percussive vibration, it will sound like this. This is for now just the rhythm, and now I can start routing different sequences to it with the switch matrix here. So this will be the first one. This is the second. So again, this is the second mu mix, being in this case we have the first sequence and the third together. I can also mute them. I can choose a different sequence. Right, and just... This is nice, let's stay with this one. Now we can also mix a few sequences together. So let's bring in the second voice, which is Plets in 2 operator FM mode. It will sound like this. Again, for now there are no sequences going to it, but let's mix 2. This is nice. Okay, let's bring in the other voices. Every kitchen sink, it will sound like this. Oh yeah. Let's also pen this maybe a bit. And this will be another voice, the FM operator. Oh yes. So I can mix and route the different combinations here to different voices. And again, I can change also the combination by muting. Oh man. By muting and unmuting, and I can change also the rhythmic section here if I want. everything on the fly. Now, another thing Stevio is doing is using another trigger sequencer to start and stop the sequence. But first of all, you know what, let's add some drums just for context. I have here the 8-step trigger sequencer, again count module. Again, I'm using teleport modules just to make the patch a bit cleaner. I have it triggering a bass drum with Meta from Starling. I have two hi-hats here, and again I'm using the swing method we looked at before to add some swing, some spice to the sound. I have here another Meta as a sort of a snare drum. This will sound everything like this. Oh yeah. Very nice. So again, another thing Stevio is doing is using another trigger sequencer to start and stop the sequence. So here I have 3 algorithm sequences from Grayscale, and we can use them to start and stop the sequences. It will just trigger the run function of each row. So let's start with the second row, leave the bass steady, and now I have a look. We get less tension, so this adds another variation. And again, we have so many options. We can mute and unmute the sequences. We can mix them and route them to different destinations. We can change the rhythm patterns. We can add and lower the tension, or raise and lower the tension by stopping and running the sequences. All of this we can do live with a flick of a switch, which is perfect for transitions, perfect for creating different sections in your live set without thinking too much. Just changing a few triggers, changing a few knobs, sending sequences to different destinations, and you have a totally different track. And that was it. There is so much to explore and experiment. Like always, there will be a link in the description to the different patches. Feel free to download them and take a closer look. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you enjoy what I do, consider becoming a Patreon. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe and hit the bell, and have a good one.